What's that sound? It's For Amusement Only, the EM and Bingo Pinball Podcast.
Welcome back to For Amusement Only. This is Nick Baldridge. Over the last 2 weeks, a lot of things have been going on, as usual. So let's jump in. My projects have been largely stagnant for the past couple weeks, but I have accomplished a couple things. First of all, on Robo-Frenzy, I did find the 30-volt issue. There was a cold solder joint on one of the 30-volt commons, which fed back to the transformer, so nothing was getting the 30 volts, except occasionally, if the wind was right, stuff would be powered. I'm still not getting power to the motor, which is, pretty crucial, and I still have a couple of wires to run off of the timer unit and the player unit, the things that actually drive the various coils. And I still need to drill and wire in the player position units, which will drive the rest. But at the moment, I'm trying to block off enough time to actually get that done and tested in a way that allows me enough time to make mistakes and, go back and fix them and document and all that good stuff. Unfortunately, I haven't had a whole lot of time to rub together here recently. I have, however, spent a bit of time on multi-races, and I got a bug under my skin here to go ahead and finish wiring up the playfield. So I went on Saturday, I believe, last Saturday, and spent a goodly chunk of time lacing up the cables that are coming from the playfield and wiring each individual wire. As I have to put the project down for long periods of time, I find that's the only efficient way to do it. Even if I was doing it the same day, completely wiring it from A to Z, it's still quite helpful to wire each individual wire before you terminate it. So I was kind of mulling the idea of using Jones plugs or not. I really enjoyed using Jones plugs on the multi-bingo, but it did get to be a bit much after a while, and I thought that the increased reliability and ease of transport might not have been worth the trade-off in the time that it took to wire those versus wiring directly to connectors. But I've changed my mind again, and Jones plugs are the way to go. So I am wiring up 2 Jones plugs in multi-races. Most of the wiring is on the playfield itself, and then some of the wiring is on the door. So as such, I won't need to have a ton of stuff running through plugs necessarily because it's not removable. But the majority of the wiring is going to come from the playfield, and that will all be run through Jones plugs. In scoping it out, I have an 11-position plug and a 12-position plug. And of course, Jones plugs, they're always duplicated, so it's 22 and 24 pin. But I have yet to wire those up. I have to wire them to the playfield wires, and I also have to wire the female side, which goes directly to the connectors of the SW16s, the switch boards, and the PD16, which is the driver board to drive the lamps. Now, I believe I've mentioned that I'm going to make every lamp in the game controlled, so that includes the 4 bumper lamps as well as the 5 playfield lamps. So we've got a total of 9 lamps, and then there's going to be a couple of coils, not that many, and they're going to be relays. So I'm going to have a relay which drives the payout mechanism, and I'll have a relay which drives the shutter motor, and I'll have a relay which drives the big motor, the control unit motor. So I'm going to have 3 relays, that's 3 coils, and then 9 lamps. And I believe that will take care of the whole game. It's pretty exciting. Not that many coils involved, which is always, good. So now the reason for that is that most of the coils are actually 120 volt AC coils. So rather than power them with less than 50 volts DC, I'm going to go ahead and run them through a relay and get them powered. So I'm looking forward to getting the last of it wired up. I just have bare wires hanging out from under the playfield, but the playfield does fit, and the wiring does fit over the trough, actually. So I will be able to remove the playfield, and the wires come out in front instead of through the back of the game. Now, I've been thinking about the back of the game, and one of my goals was to make it so that I could still drop in the original playfield and play Victory Derby, should I choose. But I'm going to have to alter the cabinet a not insubstantial amount. Now, the way that I'm altering it wouldn't impact Victory Derby, except for the fact that I've taken out the reset bar. So I'm going to have to figure out a way to make that work, or I need to actually pull out some of the mechanisms in the back. Now, the way that the game is wired, Victory Derby is really cool from a standpoint of repair, because every mechanism in the back actually flips out on its own little shelf. So you can flip out the control unit shelf and work on that, or you can flip out and access it from both sides, which is extremely helpful without having to remove the back glass or do anything else. So I really enjoy that aspect of it. I think it's such a cool design, but it's a lot of weight to be added, and for not a lot of gain. Now, the floor length cabs are already heavy enough, and it's going to be weighted in the front, which means that it doesn't need to be quite so heavy in the back in order to achieve the same amount of resistance while you play and shake. So I'm thinking I'll go ahead and start removing some of the items. I am already going to have to rewire the payout mechanism in such a way that's not reversible, so even if you did play Victory Derby, you wouldn't achieve a payout in the same way. So I think the die is cast, and I just need to go for it. I've just been kind of chicken about it. Haven't wanted to do it, but I think the time has come. So that means that this will no longer be backwards compatible, unfortunately. I'll have to replace a shelf or two and probably some wiring, because I'm going to have to de-wire several trunked bundles in order to make this happen. But I think it's all for the best. The control unit I can move down to a lower shelf, which will lower its center of gravity, but also make it so that the back glass is more accessible, so that I can replace with the TV / monitor and block that in and leave that accessible for troubleshooting and removal or whatever needs to happen. So I think that's the master plan there, but it's going to take a little bit of doing and experimentation in order to do this right. The other thing is I'll need to wire up a very small Jones plug in the head to carry the signal from the relay to trigger the control unit to fire off. Another thought I've had with regard to coils, since so few will be used, is to go ahead and wire in some of the steppers. So if I was able to run some more, if I'm already running a plug to the head, I could run a few more wires and make it so that, for example, I can step the replay unit for any stepper that happens to be fired, and that would make it so that you get that pleasing stepper sound without the need to actually track the position of the stepper. I like that idea. Now, whether or not there's space to do it, if I recall correctly, the control unit shelf actually has a stepper located on it, perhaps two. The control unit is much smaller than some of the later games. So if that's the case, it's a no-brainer. It's right there. I'll go ahead and do it. Now, it's two different voltages. It's 120 volts to run the control unit, and it would be 50 volts to run whatever stepper coils are needed. But again, for the sake of sonic clarity, I think it would be worth it. I will also be placing in a replay register, just like the multi-bingo, so you'll hear the real replay register sounds accruing, and of course the payout mechanism and shutter motor are real, so you'll hear those real sounds as well. So all in all, the sound package, I should not need to emulate or simulate any of the sounds that are produced by the game. It should be able to produce the entire sonic range, which is pretty exciting. I mean, I'm pretty thrilled about that. It is going to take a few more drivers than just the few that it's going to take to actually run the game, make it so that it functions. But I think it's well worth it, and I certainly have the space on my driver boards. See, one of the things about the driver boards is that you have 2 banks of 8. So if you can divide up your coils evenly into 8 and 8, and in my case I'm going to be driving lamps off of one set of 8, and then one additional lamp is in there, so I need to utilize the second set for that. And then I'll need a second driver board to drive my coils, and that gives me 16 total coils I can fool around with, but I've only talked about 3. So if I have a replay register up and down, that's 5. And if I have a stepper, that's another 1 or 2, so let's say that's 7. And I can throw in another couple steppers just for different stepper sounds, because the replay unit is going to give one very distinct sound. However, there are various other steppers for keeping track of various things within the game that would give a more standard sound, I guess you'd say. It's a sound that you'd expect if you were standing in front of one of these machines. So I just have to balance all that and figure out what the best options are going to be, and that's going to come with a lot of testing. But I can run all those wires, and like I say, if I'm running a plug to the head anyway, who cares, right? It's essentially free. So, a reminder, and you'll be hearing these reminders all the way up to TPF. I will be at Texas Pinball Festival in Frisco, Texas, March 22nd through 24th of 2019, and I'll be bringing the multi-bingo with me for everybody to play. And I may even have a prize for you if you're able to get 4 or 5 in a row. Also, the reason that I'm going to TPF is not just to introduce the multi-bingo to a brand new crowd of people, but there's going to be an announcement there, something else that I've been working on. And I'm very much looking forward to hearing what you think. So if I see you at Texas, be sure to let me know. All that said, let's move on to today's featured game. It's 1959's Williams Golden Bells. Golden Bells is one of the great 1950s games that has multiple ways to win, and it's got some of that Williams innovation, which is usually pretty interesting. So in this game, there's a sequence of 10 bells marked cleverly 1 through 10. Your goal is to get any 5 in a row, any 7 in a row, or all 10 in a row to light special. The special is collected through a center gobble hole, and what makes this really appealing to me is that you don't have to get them in order. Well, you do, but it doesn't have to start at number 1, if that makes sense. For example, you can get numbers 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 and light special. If you light 8 and 9 afterwards, you get double special, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, if you see what I'm saying. It can be any 5 in a row and any 7 in a row. And then lastly, if you get all 10, you light triple special at the gobble hole. This looks like a game, and it's not one that I've played, but I've seen come up frequently here recently. This looks like a game that would provide quite a bit of challenge. Let's talk about the playfield layout here, because I think it's pretty interesting. As you come onto the playfield, there are 2 bumpers, 2 passive bumpers, arranged at the top, flanking 2 rollover lanes. Now, the passive bumpers advance the lit bell. So there's an indicator above each bell on the playfield. There are 10 bells arrayed there towards the center, and there's a little indicator above them. And the lit one will be acquired when you hit one of the targets marked spot. Now, the rollover lanes will spot the lit bell, but only one of the lanes will spot at any given time. It'll alternate back and forth. So you have to nudge the ball into the appropriate lane in order to start your sequence. And then from there, you're going to build, remember, any 5 in a row, 7 in a row, or 10 in a row. Down below these lanes, there's a cluster of 3 bumpers. One of them is another advanced bumper, and flanking that on the left and right side are 2 jet bumpers, pop bumpers, that'll fling the ball around. In the corners, up above the bumpers, there are 2 stand-up targets. They each score 100,000, or when lit, and again this is alternating, it will award you 1 bell. It'll spot one of the bells for you. Now, one of the interesting features about this playfield are these big plastics which cover the left and right sides. They're marked with artwork that says advance, and with arrows pointing to 1 stand-up target, kind of close to the flippers, and above that, rebound rubber, which is directly perpendicular to the center targets, which we'll go over shortly, and then one which is angled towards the jet bumpers. So a good bounce off of the jet bumpers can advance the bell and then spot the bell, hopefully multiple times, but likely that's not going to happen. So right in the center of the playfield, there's a big set of 3 targets. First, there's the gobble hole right in the center. It's big. It's right in your face. It scores 500,000 points or special, single, double, or triple special, depending on which part of the sequence you've completed. To the left and right of this gobble hole, there are 2 kickouts, which kick right down towards the flippers. I mean, it's directly towards the flipper. And they score 50,000. And when they're lit, so this is alternating as well, they will spot one of the bells. Down below that, those are the stand-up targets that I was talking about. Those advance, and they also score 100,000 points. So they're pretty valuable, but they're very dangerous with the angle that they're at. Below those is another set of targets. However, they're alternating. Instead of always advancing, they will alternate and spot a bell or earn you 100,000 points. And below that are sling kickers, which will fire back up the playfield, and boy, they look angled in a dangerous way because the gobble hole is pretty wide open, and you can actually fall into the gobble hole from the top or the bottom, which is a little bit unusual. I really like this playfield layout, and I think it has potential to be great fun and very frustrating in a fun way. Below the sling kickers are the flippers, and if you've seen a game with the large triangular sling kickers, then you kind of know what you're looking at here. The flippers are just slightly down from the outside corner of the triangle. So it's arranged in such a way that there's no out lanes. There are only these 2 drains to the out hole. And the drains are a set of lanes. So you can actually bump the ball back into play by using your bingo skills, nudging it over to the flipper. This playfield exit is one of my favorite types because I feel like a skilled player can keep the ball in play just as long as they want to. And a skilled player that is also able to avoid the gobble hole despite the pop bumper, which is looming, directly to the left and right of it, and can fling the ball right into it. So those 2 lanes, which lead to the out hole, also will spot a bell when lit, and again, that alternates, and they'll score 100,000 points. So again, this layout looks extremely challenging, but a whole lot of fun. I can't wait to play one day. This is a game, this looks exactly up my alley as a game that I would like to own. But I'll have to play it one day and find that out for sure. So let's talk about the artwork. On the back glass is a lady playing the bells, and they're arrayed in concert format, so they're pitched from highest to lowest, and she's picking them up and ringing a couple of them. And above her is this large stripe which goes up the back glass and has the bells numbered 1 through 10, which will light when you have those spotted. On her right, you have the 10,000s, and on the left of the stripe, you have Williams Golden Bells written there, and then the 100,000s, and above that, at the top of the back glass, you have the millions. The playfield is very colorful. It's red, white, and blue, and yellow, and green. The passive bumpers that advance the bells are green. The jet bumpers are yellow. And the playfield is mostly on a field of blue, and the advance plastics, which I mentioned on the left and right-hand side, or light shields, depending on the terminology, are mostly red. At the top left and right, you have plastics which have an illustration of a bell, and at the bottom left and right on the sling kickers, you have the woman who's playing the bells. She's playing them again down at the bottom, twice. And above that, towards the center of the playfield, you have the 10 bells arrayed with their 10 inserts to indicate the ones that you've already spotted, and then 10 inserts above that to indicate the one which will be spotted next. I think this art package is straightforward, but I do happen to like the way that every shot is indicated on the playfield. I feel like the art really draws your eyes to the places where it needs to. In order to indicate, what you're doing. And again, the fact that there are essentially 3 different sequences, or 2 sub-sequences and a main sequence, I think is fantastic. There's nothing more satisfying than being able to really beat a game, getting all 10 bells lit and thunking it in the gobble hole perhaps twice in a row. That would be quite pleasant. So hopefully I get to play one of these one day. Well, that's all for tonight. Thank you very much for listening. My name again is Nick Baldridge. You can reach me at foramusementonlypodcast@gmail.com, or you can call me on the Bingos line. That's 724-BINGOS1, 724-246-4671. You can listen to me on iTunes, Stitcher, Pocket Casts, via RSS, on Facebook, on Twitter at Bingo Podcast. You can follow me on Instagram, also at Bingo Podcast, or you can listen to me on my website, which is foramusementonly.libsyn.com. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.